One day the guys are like, oh, cool, we need to drill these like holes into the jib. And then I had those long drill bits, you know, the real sharp drill bits. So like, I was like, yeah, mate, cool. And then I did the old reverse, grabbed it, and then just went zzz, and just like sliced my hands open. Like an hour later, the boss saw some blood flowing down my arm. And he's like, what's that? And I was like, he's like, mate, you got to get out of here. You got to go to the doctor. What is success to you?
I think it was a learn to love it experience.
And there's always pitfalls that you can fall in, but then you've got no one else to blame but yourself.
Number one thing if you're struggling is to catch up with people about it.
Henry, thanks for coming on the podcast, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to come out. You've had a lot of experience. You're very, we've just had a chat before around the type of work that you do. Very impressive, high-end architectural stuff, high detail, which is really cool stuff. I love and get quite frothed on. So we can talk a little bit about that. But before we do that, I want to rewind a little bit more to sort of where did you grow up? Did you grow up around Auckland or around here? Just want to sort of get a bit of an idea of you, who is Henry?
I'm an Aussie, obviously.
I didn't actually pick that up. So,
didn't you?
Yeah, I didn't.
See, I've been here a long time. Born and bred Aussie, which will probably ruffle a few feathers on this podcast straight away.
You're out.
You're out.
No, I love Australia. I lived there for 2 years, so I actually love it. Where in Australia are you from?
So I'm from a little place called Tathra, which is about 600 kilometres south of Sydney on the far south coast of New South Wales.
Yep.
Hour north of the Victorian border. Very small area. Surfing, fishing, all the fun stuff. I finished school early. I was 17, straight into an apprenticeship. I did 6 months of a plumbing apprenticeship, actually. Went to the dark side.
Oh, yeah.
But I always wanted to be a builder. Yeah. I wasn't doing much at school, and Mum put the hard word on me about either do better or move on. So, did my apprenticeship, 4-year apprenticeship, finished it in 99, I think. And then, sort of moved to Sydney from there, did a bit of work at the Sydney Olympics. That was my first glimpse of that sort of big commercial side of it, of the building industry, rather than sort of little houses in the country. And then sort of worked as a chippy for a few years, and then went to London and was in London for 4 years. And that's where I really got to do really cool high-end stuff, and that was where my eyes were open to that side of the building industry. I was like, oh, right, this is where I want to be. Cool. I want to do cool stuff.
And what type of projects? I can only imagine. So was that sort of like those like modern kind of builds, or was it more that sort of like old money, type of, I could just imagine what the type of homes that they build like in the upper end suburbs around London.
Yeah.
What sort of projects were you working on there?
So I got a job with a company. A mate of mine was like the personal chef for this really wealthy guy. He owned Ted Baker. He may still own it. They owned. I think he owns Ted Baker still. Anyway, he was sort of his personal chef. Nice. And there was a fit out company that all they did was Ted Baker stores. And he got me a job with them. And we started off doing, these amazing stores, like, just some of the craziest stuff I've ever seen. There was almost unlimited budget, but you'd have a set contract. So the day we started, the billboards out the front would say the day the store was opening. And you're expected to work, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and, the guys worked their butts off. But the level of quality and some of the stuff, like we were hanging, chandeliers worth tens of thousands of pounds and, that sort of thing. So it was really cool. It was an eye-opener. And then I went travelling for a while and then came back, and then I worked for a company called Fit Out UK, which I feel like every Kiwi who's moved to London has worked for. I think there was about 250 Aussie and Kiwi chippies on the books when I was there. And that was where I got sort of a foot in the door with more contract management, project management. I'd had a guts full of being on the tools. I thought I wanted to be in a white shirt and slacks in the office and just running around site, which I didn't once I realise what was involved in it. So I worked there till I came back to New Zealand. I moved back to New Zealand.
Right. And so what are Aussie and Kiwi builders' reputation in London?
Back then, it was awesome. They were the cream of the crop. Like, Fit Out UK was owned by, well, both companies I worked for were owned by English people, but Fit Out UK pretty much only employed Aussies and Kiwis. Yeah, right. But I don't know if it's still the same. I've heard, through the grapevine of other guys coming back that it's changed a bit. I think, like, as I was leaving was when they opened up some of those countries in the EU, so there was a lot of Polish guys and those countries coming over to work, and
right.
I think the dynamic changed a bit. But while I was there, it was cool. It was, everyone was there to work really hard, make heaps of money, and then go on good holidays. It was cool. Yeah, it was a good vibe.
Yeah, that must be amazing, because there's so many cool places to go around Europe, like close by, quick flights, quick train rides.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, epic.
Yeah.
So then you came to New Zealand, and so you started your company here. Did you go straight on? Were you on the tools when you started here, or did you just?
Yeah. So the Fit Out UK thing, just a real quick backstory. I'd started off, like I said, I wanted to try out the whole project management side, and I replaced a New Zealand guy who was coming home, and I spent 2 weeks they said, follow him around, follow Tom, see what he does, you'll take over his job. After 2 weeks of watching Tom, I went to the boss and said, I can't do that. Like, he's amazing. That guy is like an encyclopedia of information. He can remember everyone's names, he knows everything that's going on multiple jobs. Like, I was like, I can't do that. So the boss said, I said, I'm just going to go back on the tools. And he was like, all right, you can go run this big commercial site. It was huge. With your tool bag on, put your shitty pants back on, your shitty boots,
Back to it?
Back to it. And so, back into my safe place, but still run the job. And then about 2 months later, I clicked that I was actually doing Tom's job. I just wasn't wearing the white shirt and the slacks,
And probably not the same pay either, I would imagine.
Well, yeah, no, it was. But it was cool because it made me realise that, I got a foot in the door in project management that probably here in Australia I would have had to do a degree to do.
Right.
And it was a real good, turning point in my mindset that I was like, moving forward to running running a business and running teams and stuff. So it was cool. It gave me that confidence that I wouldn't have got in Australia or New Zealand, You just wouldn't have got that opportunity.
Yeah.
I had 30 chippies under me. It was a massive commercial site, and we were the go-to guys for the carpentry work. So, yeah, it was a really cool way to get into it. And then that finished up and I met my wife, who's a Kiwi, and obviously...
Yeah. The rest is history.
The rest is history.
And it's quite interesting though. So what was that change in your mindset? Because you get on a plane, you fly to the UK, you're a chippy, you fly on the plane back, now you're Mr. Project Manager. What sort of shift needed to take place in your mindset to kind of get from one to the other? Because how we see ourselves is kind of important, right?
Yeah, it was funny. It all happened in London. It was really cool. I don't know if it was the the change of, moving somewhere foreign and being a bit out of your depth, or whether it was just an age thing and a maturity thing. I think I quite often tell my apprentices, it wasn't until I was 25 that I actually one day sort of went, I'm actually good at this, But all those years before I was not confident that I was good at what I did for a living, So London, I think, because over in London, if you just were confident enough to have a crack at a job role, they'd give it to you, whereas here they'd say, well, have you done project management? No. So, yeah.
Got your PMP or something?
Yeah. So, you got to sort of be thrown in the deep end to see if you sink or swim. And if you swim, the world's your oyster. How far can you go? It was cool. So, I went over there as this country boy who was going to party and could swing a hammer, and then came back sort of really full of confidence and pumped about the level of quality that some people are doing, So it was cool. London was a game changer for me. It's huge.
Yeah, and I think it's probably a big part of that was probably you stepping out of your normal environment. You could almost reinvent yourself over there.
Totally.
And come back like a new man,
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's very cool. So then how long did it take before you started your business over here?
So a bloke I worked with in London, a Kiwi, he'd moved back already, and he got me a job with his boss. We were doing a big renovation in Remuera. And I worked there for probably, I don't know how long we worked there, probably a year. And then I'm not quite sure what happened. Him and the clients had a bit of a dust up. I'm not sure, they parted ways, so, the job was over. And the writing was on the wall for me with him anyway for a while. And I was keen to do my own thing. And they came to me and said, would you take over the job? And I said, no. I said, I can't, my first job can't be taken over of someone else's, I said, but in 6 months, if you haven't got a builder, give me a call. And like on the day of 6 months, they rang me and said, right, when starting, And for that 6 months, I'd been doing, decks and fences and,
Right, so you're pretty keen to get back.
As you do when you start, I started off in New Zealand. I knew my wife, but I didn't know anyone else. So, I didn't have a network. I didn't have anything. So I sort of started off really small and, So, it was cool. I went there and I finished that renovation and then that sort of good old Auckland word of mouth thing started to roll, from they introduced me to someone and then that person, introduced me to someone and it's sort of rolled on ever since.
And what was so obviously you were on the tools and then you then transitioned, I assume, a time came where you transitioned off the tools and got back into just project management and running the company. And what was that process like? I think there's because a lot of listeners listening into this, they are probably at that point now where they're thinking, should I transition? What is the first step of transitioning? How did you go about transitioning from, being off the tools to completely just focusing running the business?
It was pretty gradual. I've always loved being on the tools and I sort of fought it for a long time. I was doing the old work all day and, pricing at night, that sort of stuff. To be honest, I can't remember the last time I put my tool bag on, but I also can't remember sort of when that happened. It's probably as I got good leaders in the team, like, once I had a really good foreman, then I was like, okay, I don't need to be here every day.
Yeah.
Probably like 2017, I'm going to say. Maybe when I sort of started to really go, I actually don't need to be on site every day.
And that was all about having someone there that was accountable, that you feel like he's got it.
Yeah, like a good working foreman. And I'm, I don't employ any project managers. Like every single person in my team has a tool bag on.
Yeah.
I don't have that. I think, if you're a Lindsay Construction or someone, with hundreds of guys, like I get that need, but at my size with like 10 guys, I don't need that, I don't need a project manager.
Yeah.
You need, for me, the winning formula is a really good working foreman, a carpenter and an apprentice. That's the dream team.
Yeah. There's
no downtime. There's no wasted time. They work as a really good team. I find on jobs where we've ended up with 10 guys on the one site, straight away you start, 10 guys who have smoko for too long, 10 guys who are late in the morning, it's compounded. 3's sort of the dream team for me.
Right.
But that working foreman is banging nails in, doing the job. But, I try and encourage them the last hour of every day, take your bag off, do the admin, put the timesheets, do whatever you need to do the ordering. We have a weekly meeting. So, it works out well. I don't know if it's the right way to do it. It's the way I do it. It's the way I've always done it, and it seems to work.
So while we're talking about that, so what's your structure like for your company now? So how many guys have you got? You got 10 guys?
Yeah, so there's 10 guys. I've got a VA who does the basic admin, payroll, invoices.
You say VA, where's she based? Is she based here or overseas? Or?
No, here. Yeah, they're a company. They're called Released.
Okay.
They're really good. They're specific to the trades.
Very good.
They're a pretty decent sized company, but it's nice to have someone who really knows the trade stuff.
Yeah.
They're really good. Yeah, they're awesome.
So you got her, and then you've got yourself, and then just 10 guys on tools.
Yeah, so I wear quite a few of the hats. Everything from sort of admin lady to QS. I do all my own QSing. I don't use QSs. And Yeah, it works really well. When I was bigger, like I had about 14 guys at one point, and it was just at the point I couldn't quite keep my hand on everything. And I felt a bit like I was drowning, you know.
Yeah.
10's a pretty nice number. But at the moment, I've got a guy who's been working with me for a couple of years now who used to own his own company, and then him and his old man, his dad retired, who was a QS. He didn't want to either hire a QS or take over that part of the job. And through a mutual friend, we were introduced, and he's come into the company, and he's gradually taken over my job really as what would probably be a project manager. Like he sees the boys every day. He's on site every day. He's in the office now and again. I try and get him in on a Friday for an hour or two, but he fights it. He's a site guy, you know. So that's worked really well, but he's still got tools in his truck and can chuck his bag on and jump in whenever's needed, you know.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. And
so
then
that works really well.
Yeah, and then what's your breakdown between qualified versus apprentice?
I've got 3 apprentices. I've got one who's pretty close to being qualified this year and 2 who are sort of halfway through. So we're right at the point where I'll start looking for another 1 or 2 brand new ones. I quite like having 2 at a time.
Yep. And what's the benefit of that?
I like to have a young, fresh apprentice in each sort of gang, you know. It just seems to work really well. And I really like apprentices. They're rad. They're cool.
It's fun. It's
I've
also
had
fun.
heaps of them. They're awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of fun hanging out with real young guys because they kind of bring energy to the site if they're the right kind of person, or just to a business in general. Like I've got like a 20-year-old working for me now. They started the other day, and it just like brings a fresh vibe into the office, like youth, you know.
Oh, they're hilarious.
Yeah. And so what, you know, there'll be apprentices listening or people looking to get, you know, maybe start their building career listening to this potentially. What advice do you have to someone looking to get into an apprenticeship, trying to find a good company? You know, obviously you're an awesome company to kind of work for because you work on the high end, the highly detailed kind of stuff. What attributes does a apprentice need to have to come and tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, can you give me a job?
Oh, honestly, the ability to just like soak up information and learn, you know, and be keen.
Attitude.
You know, it's attitude. Yeah. Like I think building's easy. It's Lego. You're just putting together stuff based off a plan, you know. Anyone can do it. It's not brain surgery. But, you know, these guys who are teachable, you know, and soak it up and like they're the first one on site in the morning and, you know, like that, I see that, you know, and it's like awesome. And it's through all my apprentices I've had, you can pretty quickly get a feel for who they are and what they're going to be like. And it's not from their skill set because they don't have skills at that age, but just their, you know, mentality and the way they chat and, you know, some look you in the eye when they chat, some look at their feet. And it's just, you can just tell the difference. Like confidence and that teachability, I suppose, you know, it's so important.
What's the do you have any horror stories of like horror story apprentice stories that you can think of?
Oh, yeah, I do. I don't know if I should tell them. They might listen and know I'm talking about them.
They shall be nameless, remain nameless. But you have any juicy stories for us potentially?
We've had a couple. We always remember their howlers. You know, we've had a few good howlers. We had one kid. We were doing a driveway and he leant a sheet of mesh up against this beautiful brand new schist stone wall that had taken a year to build, and then he just dazzled the cut he was going to do on the Rio and just dazzled right up the, you know, thing. We've had an apprentice try and cut reinforcing steel with tin snips, you know. It's good, you know, that sort of stuff's fun, you know, and they live on. Like I've got a mate who, he did his apprenticeship with me years ago and then he went on to other things and, you know, now he's become a fireman actually. He's a really, you know, awesome fireman and, you know, he's an awesome guy. We've become really solid mates. He's, you know, married, he's got kids now and that. And, you know, I still give him shit about some of the howlers he had, you know, way back then, you know, in like 2010, you know. So, yeah, it's cool.
So funny, eh? Like when I was, you know, 18 or something like that, I was like a hammer hand for a while just during summer.
Yeah.
And now I've got soft hands. I'm not in construction, do office things. But back then I still had soft hands, and I was working, on site, and I saw the guys, do the old drill bit thing.
Yeah.
You don't just turn it, you kind of chuck it in reverse and then chuck the drill bit in, and, the old like real fast, looks real cool. And I kind of been practicing that for a while, when you're 18, you just kind of real keen. And then I kept doing it. And then one day the guys are, oh, cool, we need to drill these like holes into the jib. And then I had those long drill bits, the real sharp drill bits. So I was like, yeah, mate, cool. And then I did the old reverse, grabbed it, and then just went and just like sliced my hands open.
Yeah.
Like it was like someone took like a spoon and just like carved out pieces of meat out of my hand.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was such a stupid thing. And then I was too embarrassed to tell anyone. So I just like wrapped it up with tape and stuff like that. And then like an hour later, the boss saw some blood flowing down my arm, and he's like, "What's that?" And I was like, "He's like, mate, you got to get out of here. You got to go to the doctor."
Yeah.
So that's the sort of stupid things you do, right? When you're young and you're keen and want to look cool, I just read recently that we officially in a recession in New Zealand, 2 quarters of negative GDP growth, I think is what it is. What impact is that going to have on the construction industry from your point of view? Sort of where do you see the industry going over the next sort of 24 to 36 months?
I mean, there's so many different parts of the construction industry, I mean, I really don't know. I can't talk for commercial or, group housing. We sort of stay well away from that sort of thing. But I think, I don't know, I think in New Zealand's a funny place, hey? I think in New Zealand, whatever they write in the newspaper, we sort of see a knock on 6 months later, like 6 months ago, they're saying there's going to be interest rates are going to go up, there's going to be a recession, and then everyone panics. So pull the plug on projects, that sort of thing. 6 months later, interest rates are not going to keep going up. They're probably going to start coming back down, and then it'll all be back on again. And I find that's that at our end anyway. So that, that's all I can talk to. So, whether that is because our clients may be in a different financial situation to other people, they might not be lending as much or whatever. But yeah, I've been doing it long enough that what's in the paper and the news is not necessarily what's happening at the coalface. I'd sort of take that with a grain of salt these days.
Yeah.
Like I'm not freaking out if we haven't got a job booked in 18 months.
Yeah.
Because I just don't, it doesn't bother me anymore because I've just watched it coming. I mean, I started my business in the recession pretty much.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Yeah. I always like, I don't actually watch the news. I might have seen a headline somewhere, but I don't even really watch the news much anymore. And half the time I don't know what's going on because I'm so focused just on living my own life and being in charge of my own destiny, so to speak. So yeah, I've had a lot of friends kind of giving me slack, kind of being like, "Do you not know what's going on?" But like it's like you're saying, sometimes it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah,
you listen to all this bad news, and now you just kind of get caught up in it. Versus just kind of keep doing your thing. I can only control what's in my environment.
Yeah.
And like, what's that saying? The stock market's is just rich people's feelings. It's just like a graph of rich people's feelings.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's what happens as well. But so in terms of your so where you see it as, I mean, obviously you're just looking at yourself. So which market do you normally work in then, Henry? What?
I would call it. I don't know. It sounds wanky saying the high end, but I'd call it the high end architectural, market. Whether it's a new home or renovation. It's heavily architecturally designed, heavy on details. It's, that's where our happy place is,
And what sort of in terms of dollar value range for what project values, just to give them an idea?
I mean, I don't really work with square metre rates anymore. I find, again, it's so easy to taint a square metre rate with, like some brass panelling in it, cabinetry will blow a square metre rate out in 2 seconds,
Yeah.
I mean, you do a house with $1 million worth of cabinetry, try and chuck a square metre rate on that, you know. So I don't know. I mean, our projects range anywhere from, you know, a $1 to $2 million reno up to, I don't know, 10, you know,
Yeah.
$10 million new build, 8 to 10, you know, could be a $4 million rebuild. And they just vary. Like every single one is so unique and so different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't really have an average we'd work to. We did one in Herne Bay that was ridiculous, you know,
What's ridiculous?
somewhere between 10 and 20 million. But, you know, it'd be great to only do those houses, but, you know.
Yeah. There's only a few of those come up from time to time.
Exactly.
I want to talk a little bit about the architecture side of things. Obviously, you guys work in that architectural space. There's sort of two foods of thought. One is you try to go find clients direct, encourage them to come to you direct, and then they can still work with the architect or with a designer, but in you know correlation with the builder, designer to budget. You know, there's an argument for that to help the client. Then the other side of that coin is we live in New Zealand. It's an architecture game, right? If you want to work in that sort of $2 million plus market, the clients are generally going to go to the architect, and the architect's going to come to the builder. So, talk to me a little bit about how you play that game, quote unquote, and how you have been able to sort of put yourself in touch with different architects and work with them and maybe add value to them so they use you moving forward.
Yeah, I think that relationship with architects is really important. I mean, I just love architecture. It's cool, you know. I mean, you get a lot of builders who can't stand architects. You know, they complain and they change everything. And, you know, I love it when that happens. You know, I love when an architect comes on site and regularly and walks around and says, oh, now I can see out that window. Like, why don't we do this? That's right up my alley, you know.
Right.
I've always been a really good drawer. You know, I'd love standing there and even on the wall on a bit of jib, like going, oh, what if we make that, you know, bit of cedar go like that rather than like that? Then we don't see a gap or we get a negative, you know. So that sort of stuff I'm passionate about that. So, you know, I've always loved architectural projects for that element of it. I mean, I know it's not my job to design, but I love the chat, you know. And I also think that, you know, clients, I love all my clients. I've got a great relationship with all my clients. We don't fall out with our clients, but they may only ever do 1 or 2 projects in their lifespan, you know. Whereas architects, you know, if you get in with a couple of good architects who are drawing a lot of, you know, beautiful plans, and if you can build a rapport with them, then, you know, they can be saying to these clients, hey, we know a builder who we think you'd be a great fit with. That's who we should get to price your job. You know, rather than go, here's the plans, it's in for consent, bang, out to 3 guys, hopefully they all come back somewhere similar, which they never do. You know, that's a flawed system in my way of thinking. I think the relationship is more important. Then you get to do a fair job, you know, a fair estimate. Yeah, that's where I see the relationship between the architect and the builder being so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think it's flawed, They'll go for 3 quotes, then they come back with their pricing. It's all apples and oranges that you're comparing. It's not a set standard, so you don't know who's included what and who's forgotten about which aspect of the project, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking now, like you go for a haircut, you don't even choose the guy cutting your hair based on price.
Yeah.
You go to the guy, you know, because you have a relationship and he cuts your hair nice. So, like, why would you something's got a $3 million budget, why would you just purely look at the numbers and you won't even look at the alignment relationship with the builder? Are you going to be able to work together, solve through issues? Obviously, there's always problems that pop up through a project, right? So you got to be able to work through that. So, yeah, no, I think that definitely makes sense to me. In terms of the contracts that you run as well, you know, cost plus versus, you know, fixed price contracts. What's your sort of point of view on all that?
I couldn't tell you the last time we did a fixed price job. We only do cost plus. I mean, my estimate is broken down into categories pretty much in the order of the way you'd build the house. So it's a really thorough document. Everything's got a number against it. Even though it's cost, you know, charge up or cost plus, we still run it in every month. We have the spend, the cost to complete, what's left to go in that line. So, you know, when something starts to look like it might go over, we can identify it, we can talk about it, you know. So, yeah, I think it works really well. You know, I think it's a really fair process, you know, for us, because they get a really good job to a really high standard for a fair rate that they can see. It's completely open book. And they only get charged for the work that gets carried out. We make a fair profit. I think it works out for everyone.
Yeah, and there's not so many hidden costs for them, or, you know, a lot of times builders have to build in their margin if anything goes wrong. Like, there's none of that. Everything's really transparent, right?
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
Totally. And the transparency is key, you know, because you want them to know they're getting a fair deal, you know. So we do beautiful work, and we're really fussy about doing that beautiful work. But, you know, I think at the end of the market we're in, we spend a lot of time with the clients on site. You know, it's not like we see them once a month, and, you know, some clients are on site every day of the week. Some might be once or twice a week. They want to wander around and talk, you know. So, yeah, we sort of provide a service. I suppose it's a bit like, we'll hang your washing out for you, and we'll hang it out perfectly, but you'll be charged for it.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to see how much you got charged for it. You know, we'll have an agreed hourly rate and a margin on top. But that's the way it works, you know. Like, we won't say no, we'll do anything you want. It's not just knocking up a house as fast as possible for a budget, like it would be in, say, a group home company.
Yeah.
Like, I get it, I just don't want to know about it. It's not my bag,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah. So that's very good, eh? So then you're very much, it's almost like a different mentality where I guess some builders would sort of almost like weirdly almost productize their builds to a point where it's just like in and out, and like they want to keep it within the scope, and they hate the variations, where you almost welcome it. You almost like completely, you know, put yourself, what's the right word? Like, you're almost like absorbed by the whole process of the project, and that you really get involved with all the changes. And you actually, like you said before, you move a window from here to here, it's going to have a better outcome. Like, you actually like those aspects just through your love of architecture. So it's a bit of a different approach.
Oh, absolutely. Like, you know, I can't live with something not being perfect in a house. You know, I mean, we just finished a beautiful house in Herne Bay, and, you know, the client decided that he wanted one whole level of the house to be an oak timber ceiling, you know. So obviously that was a massive change. And it had beautiful ECC strip lighting all through it. And, you know, we manufactured boards so that they worked perfectly, full boards to the way where they hit the lights. And, you know, we had to like rip some boards that were a different length at one end to the other just to get it to work so it could fudge around corners. You know, it was cool. And like, there was a part of the ceiling that, you know, the boys had been into it for about 2 months, and you could tell they were probably getting over it, and it was probably a Friday, and they, you know, there's probably a couple of square metres they sort of rushed, and it wasn't perfect. And I said to the client, it has to be fixed. And he said, no, there's no way. We had a friendly argument over it. Not an argument, but, you know, we disagreed.
You were saying you'd want to redo it, and he said you don't have to.
We can't live with that. He said, it's fine. No one will see it. He said, I wouldn't have seen it if you didn't tell me. And about 3 days later, I rang him back and I said, you have to let me fix it.
I can't sleep.
I said, I'm not going to charge you for it. He said, nah, it's going to take too long. You know, he was never about cost. He was always about get it done. And then, yeah, a couple of days later, he rang me up and he went, all right, go on, fix it. Just do it quick. You know, and it was cool because, you know, it bothered me so much that it wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
And, you know, if he'd have said flat no, I would have lived with it too, because he's the boss. But, yeah, it's that sort of stuff. I'd lose sleep over that.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, that's amazing. That's really good. I mean, if people looking to build their home would love to hear that, especially on architects as well. Talking about architects, a lot of builders listening to this may be wanting to get in front of architects a little bit more, you know. They'd love to be able to build relationship with an architect that they can do work with, you know, on a more regular basis, like you said, not just chasing a single client, but, you know, having a bit of more of a continuity with an architect. What would be your advice around, you know, a competent builder looking to work with more architects? How would you approach, if you had to start today, how would you approach that?
Yeah, it's a tough one because, you know, good architects probably get 10 emails a day from builders wanting to do their work, you know. So my point of contact has always been relational. It's been either through an industry thing. I used to be a judge in the House of the Year competition, the Master Builders House of the Year competition.
Oh, wow.
And
cool.
that's a mix of builders and architects. So I met a bunch of great architects through that and formed relationships with them. And, you know, one of the architects I do quite a lot of work with was another judge in the House of the Year. Yeah, there's probably just getting your face out there. Some of it will be through clients. You know, again, for me, everything's word of mouth. Auckland's tiny. You know, I've lived in some big cities. Auckland's so small and your reputation is everything. And it can work both ways. If you've got a good reputation, it will spread and so will a bad. So, you know, even if you're like I was doing starting off as a one-man band, you're doing decks, fences, you know, do them perfectly. You know, it won't take long for people to go, this kid's just done my deck and it's the most perfect thing I've ever seen in my life, or it's a piece of shit, one way or the other, you know. And at some point, someone's going to know a wealthy client or an architect or, you know, it's just that word of mouth thing. If it was in Sydney or London, or it's probably different. Maybe it is, I don't know, maybe it's not. But in Auckland, it's just small, you know. I mean, I know all the good builders, you know. I know all the, you know, yeah, you form a network and then your word gets out and you meet people and that's how you do it. I don't advertise. I don't have signage on my truck anymore. I sort of like the idea of being a little bit hard to find and flying under the radar because, again, I just think it's all about that relationship. You know, I don't want people to go, you know, let's get that guy to quote the job along with 4 others that we found by Googling builder in, you know, North Shore builder. Like, it's not me. Like, whenever I get people ring me up, you know, from marketing companies saying, you know, do you want more Google hits? And I'm like, ugh, no, I don't want any Google hits.
I always wonder, like how many clients or how many people that want to build a $3 million home would be Googling builders, you know, North Shore, like whatever, right?
Or ring me because they saw me sitting in traffic at a red light, you know.
Yeah,
probably blowing up at someone in front of me. Get the fuck out of the way.
Yeah, exactly. So it's very different, guys. Like I mentioned to you before, we've got like a baby construction business that we started a couple of years ago, and our approach was very much to try to educate them, like go out there, educate the market on why it's important to get a builder involved early with the architect to kind of price it to budget. And I think that has, you know, like we had rose-colored glasses on in a sense that, you know, you want to go out and educate the market. It's a very difficult thing to do. And even though we had the client's interest in mind, I think that it's very important for you to understand the market that you're in and the game that you're playing and playing within the rules of that game. You know what I mean? And so, it makes absolute sense to realize that the architects are essentially like, you know, at the top of the heap. And if you can work in with them a bit more regularly, I think that's probably a more, especially if you're working at the sort of the high, looking to target the high end market, I think that's the only way you're going to be able to get in there. It's like through the architects.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, the clients trust the architects too. Yeah. They've trusted them and paid them a lot of money to design their home. So I think they quite often will look to the architect for some advice on how to pick a builder, you know. So, I mean, I don't think many architects would be like, here's your plan, good luck. You know, most are probably like, hey, you know, this is a pretty complicated build. These guys here have done jobs similar in the past. You know, I mean, if they've had a guy who's come in, done a rough job, blown the budget, they're not going to keep recommending him. You know, but so I think, again, it's really important that partnership of the architect and the builder, if that's strong, then, you know, the clients haven't got anything to worry about. Whereas I think, you know, it used to be almost like the architect was there to protect the client from the builder. You know,
it's kind of weird. Yeah.
Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. Yeah.
Whereas I think that's changing now in that, you know, sometimes by the time we get to an end of a job, the client trusts us so much, you know. I mean, we've had one where every time, like the poor landscape designer, he every time he'd submit plans to the clients, they'd go, "Oh, we just need to check with Henry first." And I was like, "Don't say that," you know. Yeah, it was hilarious, you know, which is cool. So, you know, yeah, the relationship with the designers it's everything.
And do you think that there's like a mentality shift that needs to happen with builders where they need to stop seeing themselves just as a carpenter and start to realize that they, you know, that they can come add some real value through more of a quote unquote consulting, you know, helping the architect, you know, with certain aspects to make something a bit more practical or whatever. Do you think that there's a shift there that needs to happen with some builders or not really?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I think a lot of builders just, you know, I mean, you've got two types. You've got your builders who, you know, want to get better, I suppose, and strive for, you know, whatever, call it perfection. I don't like to use the word perfection because it's impossible, but, you know, strive to be awesome. And then you've got your guys who just want to roll up in their like shitty van with odd socks on and their hair sticking up. You know, there's two types and they've both got a role, you know, whereas I've always seen, you know, myself and the guys I raise up, like the apprentices and stuff, you know, I'm always trying to uplift them in that, like, we play a really important role, you know. I mean, you know, they do 4 years of study to become a carpenter. I mean, you know, it's like same. There's no difference to me between that and a bachelor degree, you know.
Absolutely.
You know, it's cool. So those guys, you know, I think, and they're the guys, you can see the guys who will make it and be a company owner, you know. I mean, I always say to my guys, like, I want to one day work for you. Like, that's how you should be looking at it. Like, I'm a stepping stone.
Yeah,
You
that's
know?
very cool, eh? So talking about that, how do you cultivate good culture in your company? I know a lot of builders, just kind of thinking builders getting poached a lot. People, you know, will give you a van, will give you a ute and a fuel card, will up your pay by $5 an hour. Builders are looking at that, yes, but builders are also really looking at companies that have like a cool culture where there's good people working there and their boss is not an asshole. They can sort of like, you know, there's some stepping stones for them, like you say, that can move their way up the company potentially. How do you sort of cultivate that to attract good staff?
I'm really big on keeping it light. Like, we have a lot of fun. You know, we used to probably back in the old days go out drinking a lot, but we don't really do that anymore. It's sort of, there's been a real shift in that, which is hilarious. But, you know, like last year we call it the Olympics. We call it the Special Olympics. And every month we had a sporting event and there was a running tally, like a leaderboard, you know. So we went axe throwing and we went out to Carradale, like clay purge shooting, and, you know, we played golf and it was hilarious. You know, that was good. And so that was cool banter. But, you know, and then even just things like always making sure the boys have all got fresh shirts, you know, and, you know, sort of having a positive vibe, you know.
Yeah.
I try and always raise guys up through the company into like a leadership role. Like, you know, I've got a guy who's, you know, he started off as an apprentice with me and he's about to, in April, click 10 years. You know, It's cool because now he's become a foreman and he's really good, you know, and it's cool. So, you know, try and keep that sort of team mentality in there, and, you know, and they're always moving up, you know, rather than bring in random management to then sort of manage the boys. I know that's how I've done it, but everything I've done has been slow and gradual, so it works, you know, whereas that advice might not work for a company who've just started out, hired 10 guys, you know, bought 10 trucks, you know. I've never done any of that. Like, I've got no overheads. Like, I don't supply cars to any of my boys. I've done it once. It didn't work out. It's unnecessary. I'd rather just pay them more money. Let them buy whatever car they want.
And why is that?
I just don't see the need in it. I didn't have it when I was a builder, apprentice or carpenter, you know, like, I have my own ute. You're responsible for your own ute. You're responsible for your own tools, you know.
Do you think it could breed a little bit of entitlement once you start handing out utes and
a little bit, and it's just, I mean, you go down to the Boat Ramp Cafe at Takapuna on a nice day, all the trucks are builders and plumbers things with boats on the back, you know, and they're all young guys. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's great if you've earned it and you can afford it. I just worry how many of them can afford it, you know. I think I've always been frugal in growth, you know, which may or may not be the right way to do it. I don't know. It's worked for me, you know. We don't get any formal training. But, yeah, I think everyone wants that flashy ute and the flashy everything and all the sign writing, and it's great to have 10 trucks before you name up the side and that. But for me, that doesn't work. I'd rather just pay the guys more money, you know, more an hour, buy your own truck.
Yeah, it's a very different work environment when the boss is stressed through his eyeballs because he's got all these outgoings and he's got to like get more projects coming through versus a boss that you say you can keep it light when you've grown slow and steady.
Yeah.
And now you're doing amazing projects and you guys are like killing it, but you've done it right. And now you can, you know, it's a more of a lighter, everyone's coming to work. It's not that sort of like stressed environment. Which would suck, you know.
Yeah.
So no, that's way better. So what's your mentality? Like, you look like you're quite fit. You look like you're healthy. You look like you have really good team culture. And what's sort of your mentality to life? How do you approach life?
Oh, I don't know, man. That's my life. I mean, it's an age thing. It's a maturity thing, you know. If we'd have had this chat before, you know, 10 years ago, probably 5 years ago, you know, I would have arranged it for after lunch so we could have a couple of beers, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas today, like now, like I'm going to go and do CrossFit at, you know, 4 o'clock, you know, so I don't want a beer, you know. So, yeah, and I think, you know, I've got 3 kids, you know, I'm married, you know, I've got a business, you know, I've got a mortgage. So, I don't know, but they've become the focus rather than even work. Like now, my wife's doing a PhD, so, you know, the opportunities come up now, you know, I'm 45. I've always worked my butt off, you know, and I've been gone early and back late, you know, whereas this is the first year ever, like I pick the kids up every day of the week now, you know, so my day's killed by 2 o'clock, work-wise. But, you know, it's cool that that's happened now and I can do that, you know. So, you know, I don't know, I suppose I'm prioritising family a little bit more than work at the moment.
Yeah. You know? So based on that same thread, what is success to you?
It's definitely financial, I think, is important, you know. I mean, my wife didn't work for 10 years because we had over 3 kids. So, you know, as much as you don't want to say it's about money, it is, you know. I think it's being, you know, happy, healthy. I think happiness is a big one, you know, like so many people in business, I think every business are just miserable, probably stressed, financial woes, you know, all that sort of stuff. And again, like I've always kept my business, like I said before, I've grown slowly and incrementally, and I've never had a lot of big overheads, you know. I may be overcautious, some may say, but, you know, I don't have to, like, make X amount of money just to, like, pay off my 4 utes and a huge flash office and a workshop and all that. That looks great, but do you really need it, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, you know, probably, yeah, being happy and healthy and, you know, and financially, you know, well off, well, not well off, but, you know, doing okay. But I think that comes, like, again, it all comes back. If you do good quality work and maintain a good relationship, which then maintains a happy client, money will come, and success and meeting the right people and all that sort of stuff. I think a lot of people these days want to jump all those steps to just having the money, you know, whereas, like, I mean, I started my business in 2007. July 2007, it was I registered the company. And I think 2010 was the first job that was actually a decent sized reno. Like it was like a 600K reno. And that was in 2010 I signed that contract.
Yeah.
And that was like, you know, so there was 3 years of, you know, didn't make any money, you know, not much. I mean, my wife she was the breadwinner.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, there's definitely an aspect of trying to be too big for your boots, you know, and we definitely fell into that a little bit with my construction business where you try to aim too high too quick and Yeah, and then you end up falling on your face, and then you have nothing anyway. So you might as well just sort of incrementally work your way up, do a good job, onto the next one, do another good job, and do that over time. So I definitely see the benefit. That's probably the right way to do it, rather than grow too fast. You know what I mean?
Ideally, I mean, I say everything we're talking about, I can say in hindsight. If you'd asked me at the start, I'd probably be saying it a lot differently. But like I can remember, signing a contract for my first house that was like over $1 million. I thought, whoa, that's $1 million. Like, whoa, I might make 150 grand profit out of that. It's a big deal. And then, and then suddenly it's a $3 million house, and then it's, sometimes you look at it and think, wow, how did I get here? And then it's a thing in Herne Bay that hangs off the cliff, and so. Yeah, it's all been really gradual. It's cool. But then, we don't, as a carpenter, like you go to school and you do tech and you get taught to, roofing, framing and all that sort of stuff, but you don't get taught how to run a business, or you don't get taught how to maintain a relationship with people, or, you don't get taught how to write contracts, or, you come out, and I think most builders are winging it.
Yeah.
That's, even recently with my sort of network of builders I deal with, the chats we have, I always like look at how are they doing it, and then I'm like, oh, you kidding me? Like, that's worse than what I'm doing, like project management software. I mean, man, I've gone through 2 years of trying every project management software under the sun, like everything. I've paid subscriptions to everything. Nothing works as well as the old Excel spreadsheet I used to run, but it doesn't work anymore. But, the amount of builders out there who I've asked and looked at what they do, and it's clunky, and they're the guys I like look at and go, I hope I'm like him one day,
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's funny, people expect builders to be, these businessmen, quantity surveyors, financial experts. They're not. They're just dudes who did an apprenticeship and then had the guts to go out on their own.
And then just figure it out. And I guess a big part of this podcast as well is to kind of open up, cut down some of those walls so people can start having some conversations. And I think there's definitely enough work to go around for everyone to eat and for people to learn from each other. And that's sort of been the ethos here. Have you changed your mind on anything lately? You talked about maturing. Is there anything a belief that you used to have that you've kind of changed your mind on? Statistically, I'm not sure what it's out on the ground there, and you talk to a lot of builders all the time. How do you find the sort of mental health of builders around when you talk to them and catch up with them in your sort of sphere?
Obviously with staff, because I see them all the time. And yeah, like I've had different guys have got different personalities. Some are more sensitive to stuff than others. I've had staff who've had some issues, and you can only do so much. You try and work alongside them and help them in that. I think the world's changed as far as what happens, especially on building sites. With the guys. I mean, when I was an apprentice, it was the good old days of you get locked in the portal and tied up at lunchtime, and tarred and feathers sort of thing, which we don't do that anymore. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just really important to provide the guys with a pretty happy, healthy environment. Again, we do good jobs. I think the guys are empowered by being on a good site, with good workmanship, to have good tools. My guys, we're all tool geeks. We're always talking about Festool gear and, who's got what gear. And, if anyone rolls up with like a Ryobi or something, they get, ridiculed, So, I think it's probably more empowering the guys to just giving them a good workplace, happy, healthy relationship. I try and be really approachable. I always say to the guys, like, I might not always be able to come to you, but like you can always come to me, I don't know, that's sort of, that's my experience with it.
Yeah. How do you deal with setbacks? And, obviously you run a big business. I assume you have setbacks sometimes, things go wrong, you lose money, massive fires that got to be put out. Like, how do you deal with that with your own mental health? Like, what sort of practical things do you do to fix your approach, or even just your perspective on the day?
The biggest thing I did was I stopped drinking. Oh, I'd not stopped drinking. I pretty much knocked drinking on the head, other than the odd beer now and again. And I started CrossFit, and that's got nothing to do with work. But those two things knocked onto everything. And I say that because it gave me something to do other than work. Like I used to. I'm from a small country town. Like, drinking is like, it's the biggest thing ever. It's like, there's like a hierarchy of who the best drinker in town is, like as from a grommet, you're like drinking. And I've sort of always loved beers, and, I've always probably had that, in hindsight, too much in the work, beer fridge in on site, on every site, and 2 or 3 beers after work every day, and I thought it was part of team bonding and that, but it's not, it just drags you down, even just those, I used to find I'd have 2 or 3 beers every day of the week, or I'd, if I sat up at night doing a quote, I'd have a whiskey or something, and I think a lot of people use it as a crutch. They're like, it helps deal with the stress. But then, like, I stopped drinking, like, suddenly I was sleeping through the night, and I wasn't stressed about the stresses anymore. I was like, that guy hasn't paid his bill. I won't freak out about it. I'll ring him up, and it's not a big deal. He's just, he forgot or whatever. Yeah, so changing stuff outside of work fixed all my stresses in work pretty much, And I think experience. I mean, now, I think I've made all the mistakes you can make. Probably made them a couple of times, but as you grow, you make less, and I've taken some hits financially. I think some of the best lessons I've ever learnt were hit my back pocket. But again, you learn from them and move on and get better.
Do you feel like the mental health conversation, because that's coming up a lot, right? Especially with the construction industry, and suicide rates and divorce rates and all that sort of stuff's pretty poor in the construction industry in Australia and New Zealand. Do you feel that the solutions are often the simpler things, like you just said, cutting out alcohol, sleeping better, doing some physical exercise regularly, having some sunlight, doing some things for yourself, like play around a golf or go for a surf, or like you say, do some CrossFit? Or do you think that could be I'm not saying a better solution, but could be a solution out there to a lot of people struggling?
Yeah, totally. I think, especially in the building industry, it's all about, getting on the beers and, that sort of thing. So I totally see that as a better way to deal with stuff, and talking about it. It's really important, like I went through a pretty rough patch when I moved here, because, I went from being really social and a huge social network to I knew my wife, and a mate at work, but, it was a struggle. The first 5 years in New Zealand was a huge struggle. Like, I'm from a place where there's no rugby. Like, I guarantee you, if the All Blacks are playing Australia, it will not be on that TV at the pub. It's all Aussie rules and league. And I got here, and I still, every time I pull into Carter's to the yard, someone will go, "Oh, you an Aussie?" And it's okay. I'm used to it now. But man, the first few years, it was terrible. I hated it. I was like, I don't want to live here. This place is crazy. So, I was miserable. And then I found someone really good to talk to, and, it was like a father figure, I suppose, and a mentor or whatever you want to call it. And just that process of getting it out and talking about your issues and your worries and that, you'd leave feeling better even without them having to say anything. So again, the young guys on site, I sort of try and check on how they're going, and, so I'm always here for a chat, and I've had a few guys over the past who have had meltdowns and that, and it's good to be there for them, I've had the old one of them, mum ringing me, come and get him because he won't get out of bed, and, or he got drunk last night and got arrested, and, it's all cool, it's all part of it.
One thing a lot of people are kind of like, I don't know if it's struggling with, but it's always like a continuous thing to work on, is that sort of family life. That, you're running a construction business, you've got a family, you've got 3 children and a wife. And do you have any sort of things that you've done that sort of help make that a lot more of a positive and constructive and healthy environment, sort of navigating between business and family?
Yeah, it's a tough one, because most guys will go through the thing of they get busy enough that they're flat out in the day, but then they're quoting at night, and so yeah, it's a tough one. I've definitely been that dad that's yelled at his kids for something that they didn't do because I was stressed from work, but I think again, about 3 years ago, I started sort of CrossFit, and it was the first thing I'd done for myself since, our oldest daughter's 10, and I hadn't done anything since, I used to surf, and my surfboard's in the shed covered in sawdust, so, I had no time for myself. And so, now, instead of coming home stressed from work, have a beer or two on the way home and then walk in the door sort of into, 3 kids, so it's full noise, now I go and train and then come home happy, and I can go to training with the weight of the world on my shoulders, grumpy clients or whatever, and, give myself a hiding for half an hour in CrossFit class, and I come home and I'm like, not a big deal. Come home with a smile on my face. So that's benefited me. I don't know whether that works for everyone, but definitely having that physical activity and something for yourself. And also I've done a fair bit of work on sort of that, I don't know, I hate that word mindfulness, that sort of, I suppose it's mindfulness, I don't know. There's a guy called Nigel Beach who's a mate of mine. He works with the All Blacks, he works with everyone, and he's into the whole Wim Hof, the ice baths, the sauna, he's cool. And he's bringing it, he's coming at it from a science background, he's bringing it into, the All Blacks. Who's better reference than that, Yeah, I've done some stuff with him. I took all my boys, the whole crew, I took to one of his Wim Hof classes, and we did ice baths, and, that sort of stuff's cool. It's powerful, It's like taking yourself out of that scenario where you're stressed about the client not paying his bills, or you've had a phone call and, you hang up and you can do some breathing while you're driving and relax, and it's not that bad.
What is mindfulness? Is it just, is it just using breathing techniques to kind of make yourself more present? Because obviously your problems are in the future, or, your problems are never really in your present that much. And if it isn't your present, you generally deal with it, and then you're not really stressed about it. You're normally stressed about the future, right? Or the past, or, depressed about the past or whatever. So is mindfulness just bringing you to the present?
Yeah, I suppose I hate that word. It's such a wanky word. It's like resilience, I hate that word too. But, they're all the same thing. It's like being in the moment, not freaking out, what's the problem? Client's not happy. All right, I can freak out and stress that he's going to sack us and whatever, not pay his bill, or I'll go and catch up with him, have a chat face to face. What's the problem? Hey, we'll fix it. You won't be charged for it, whatever it is, And they're never a big deal, All the things I think of that I've lost sleep over, none of them have been big deals. You just got to fix it, So I suppose the answer to the question is, that mindfulness or whatever, it's working on the problem in the moment rather than stressing about what was or what's coming,
Yeah.
And that's hard, it's learned. Like my wife, like I said before, she's doing a PhD and she's in deep, in over her head, she's doing really well. From the outside, I know she's doing well, but her personality is she's in deep. What have I started, stressing about when she'll finish it, all this stuff out of her control that's far away that, she's trying to pull back into the moment. And it's destructive that when you're worrying about that stuff.
100%.
Man, I've always all it's taken is one phone call from a client to send me into a state of anxiety, and it's unnecessary.
100%. I love it. I'm going to run through some rapid fire questions, and then we're going to be all done, Henry. So thanks so much for coming on, man. This has been really good. And feel free to pass, because if you say something and you want us to edit it out later, just let us know as well. Henry, how big is your team?
11, including me.
What's your crew mix?
Carpenter, foreman, apprentice, ideally.
Perfect. How many projects did you complete or work on last year?
2.
What turnover range do you normally work in? Under 1 to 3 mil, 3 to 5 mil, 5 to 10 mil, 10 to 20 mil, 20 mil plus?
3 to 5 on average.
What's the lowest gross profit margin building company should be aiming for?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I would say profit on your gross turnover should probably be somewhere around the 15 to 20%, somewhere in that bracket. 20 is probably high.
Free quote or paid quote?
I'd like to be paid, but yeah, usually free.
And I guess it's because you have that somewhat certainty because it comes through the architect and relationship.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
fine. Project management software or spreadsheets?
Oh man, I use project management software, but it's a ball ache.
What did
But
you end
yeah.
up on? Which one are you using?
Build a trend.
That seems to be pretty popular.
Yeah.
EV or petrol head?
Petrol head. I want to buy a big gas guzzling V8 American truck. My wife keeps telling me to go buy it, and I keep stopping myself.
We just had one of our guests this morning just said, like, what did you have? A Dodge Ram, eh? Jen?
Yeah, I've driven the Dodge. I like the Chevy. Yeah, it's an itch I think I just need to scratch, but
I think you deserve it.
yeah, my biggest fear is just looking like a wanker with all, turned up on site and all the boys going, oh, look at him in his new truck. You know?
Even worse than that, I drive a Mercedes Ute. Do you know what tradies think about that?
Yeah.
Even worse. Classic rock or classic?
Classic rock, 90s.
Jock or hippie?
Somewhere in between.
Used to be a hippie, now you're a jock? CrossFitter?
I think I'm in between. I can play both roles, put it that way.
Are you too mean or too nice to your staff?
Too nice, definitely.
You an extrovert or introvert?
Extrovert. Let's go with extrovert.
Yeah, that'd be pretty tough moving countries when you're extrovert. Motocross or fishing?
Neither.
Surfing or CrossFit?
That's a tough one. Now, this stage of life, CrossFit, I'm kind of addicted.
Which one do you go to? Which box?
Kiamaya,
Oh, okay, cool.
down in Warrior. Yeah.
I used to do a lot of CrossFit 10 years ago. I owned like my own CrossFit store and everything back in the day.
Yeah, I can't get enough of it.
Yeah, I'm kind of get back into it
Yeah,
now. I think I
it's-
got all fat. And,
It's a drug, yeah.
yeah.
good drug.
Favorite business or non-business book?
I don't read business books. I really like books about the military, to be honest. I read a lot of like special forces stories and stuff. And I think like that relates totally. The way those guys' teams run, that's how business teams should run.
Any good one that you could recommend?
No Easy Day. That's a great one. He's got two. I can't remember the other. No Easy Day and can't remember the other one by Mark Owen. They're both rad.
What's your favorite hobby?
Well, CrossFit, but just kicking it with my family these days. Yeah, hanging out with the kids. Yeah, they're rad.
Yeah, I get that. What's one thing no one knows about you?
I'm not going to tell that on a podcast. Shit, I don't know. Pass. That's a tough one. I think everyone knows everything about me. I'd spill my guts.
Are you an alpha or beta male?
I don't like the idea of being an alpha, but I think I am an alpha because I don't like to sit back and watch shit go by. I think I get out there and get into it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
People that think they're alpha normally aren't alpha, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or if they tell people they're alpha, they're definitely not alpha. Wine or whiskey?
Whiskey. Red wine or whiskey. Yeah.
Makita, DeWalt, or Milwaukee, or Ryobi?
Makita. Well, Festal, but if there's no Festal, Makita.
Glass half empty or glass half full?
I think glass half full.
Do you think more about the past or about the future?
I stop myself thinking about the past. I want to, but you've waste of time. Probably the past, but yeah, it's a battle.
It is a battle.
Yeah.
Live fast and die young or live slow and die old?
Nah, live slow and die old.
That's it, Henry. Did you have fun?
Yeah, it was awesome. Feel
Thanks,
like I
man.
probably talk too much, but anyway.
Well, that's the point of the podcast. Now, I appreciate you coming on, and I think a lot of people listening would find real benefit just getting a little bit of an insight into your business. So, I appreciate you being generous with sharing. So,
That was fun. Thanks for having me.
awesome. Thanks, mate.